the BWIO show.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Such a pleasure to have with me Mr. Page and Mr. Jones, who are my instructors and who, just help my life be a little bit better with music.
Oh, bless you.
So can we start off by each one of you telling me about yourself and your voice?
Oh, sure. Okay. I'm Kelvin Page. I'm a tenor. I have had the good fortune of having, being a native Washingtonian, of course, and educated here at the University of the District of Columbia with the late Charlotte Wesley Holloman. And I also studied with Sylvia Olden Lee and Joy McLean Bosville. And I also had the good fortune of being an Ellington alum. That's where I first began to take voice with Dorothy Dash and the late Edward Jackson. And I've had so many wonderful influences, and my voice is a tenor voice. Started out lyric, but it ended up being spinto because the voice opened up and the size of the voice grew. But I still had agility, so I was able to sing lots of performances of Mozart things and Handel things, and featured soloists in with opera groups and with the Hinesley Opera, the Sam Bond's Opera Workshop. I did Remus in South Dakota, touring all over South Dakota. I've done parts in Poor Gambit, Sport and Life, and the Crabman that I've done. I've had I've been on the Washington Performing Arts roster as a teaching artist for about 20, 25 years now. So that has given me a wonderful outlet to do concerts all around the city. And we have collaborated for nearly 40 years on all levels. And Mr. Jones has been a coach, outstanding accompanist, an educator at Howard, UDC. We both worked at Ellington School of the Arts together. And we've done a lot of performing these past almost 40 years together. So I still talking about voice and my voice, I know I'm going everywhere. I did a lot of Baroque music, like Messiah, Bach Cantata 160 for tenor, the Magnificat. I've done those solos here in DC and Philadelphia. A lot of works like that I've done. And it's very important to have a good technique and a wonderful vocal coach to lead you through all of that. So I was fortunate to have Charlotte Holloman and Dorothy Dash and Sylvia Olden Lee and Edward Jackson. You know, when I first began to take voice, the first style I learned how to sing was coloratura, the fast singing Comfort Ye in Every Valley. Mm-hmm. I was a student at the Ellington School of the Arts. And I even had the chance to perform that at the White House during their Christmas celebration, where they had choirs from all over the United States to come. But DC always had DC Youth Chorale and the Ellington School to come. So I'm gonna let Mr. Jones talk, because I can talk for hours and hours about old times and voice and everything like that. So Mr. Jones.
Well, I've always loved singing from childhood. One of my favorite things to do was to sing songs as I walked home from school, from elementary school. So in high school, of course, I was really involved in the choral program, plus the music theory program that we had at our school. I went to Howard for undergrad and graduate school. I found it very, very stimulating because of people like Richard Smallwood, who had just graduated, the Blackbirds, lots of groups like that. And the choral program was excellent. I even was the assistant choir director during my senior year, and that I continued that in graduate school as the graduate assistant for the choral teacher. And right after I graduated, my first job was teaching at Philander Smith College. I didn't have a lot of singing experience except for with the choir, but I had done solos with the choir, and I had done a lot of Baroque music, Messiah, the Bach's B minor Mass, Bach's St. John's Passion, and other things. I even joined an early music group called Musica Antiqua, where they specialized in medieval and Baroque music and Renaissance music. So I got a lot of experience there. And then teaching on the collegiate level helps to hone your skills. It makes you realize what you really know and what you don't really understand that well. So when I returned to Washington, I had the opportunity to work at the Duke Ellington School as the accompanist, where I just played choral music and solo music for 4 hours per day, 5 days a week. It really helped to intensify my understanding of singing and to understand the styles of music, which is so important for me as a coach and accompanist. I spent some time in 1985 in Europe. Kelvin and I went to a festival, Festival Stiana, which was a festival held in Italy for Americans mostly, international music festival, where I had the opportunity to do two roles. One was Hercules in the Bach cantata, Hercules at the Crossroads, which was staged, and the other was Handel's Muzio Schaberla, because it was the 350th anniversary of Bach's and Handel's birth. So we were there for like 6 weeks. It was a great experience. We were in a town where nobody spoke English, so we had to learn Italian. We had daily coachings with outstanding artists from La Scala, the Australian Opera, etc. So when we came back at the end of that summer, it seems as if the excitement and all of the energy that we had when we were there was transferred back here. And it started an explosion of performances and being involved not only as solo artists, but also as involved in church, as leaders in church music. I was the minister of music at Asbury United Methodist Church for perhaps 10 years. And during that period, I had an excellent choir. We were able to do lots of beautiful choral music. And also we did big works, the Foray Requiem, the Messiah, Sansal Christmas Oratorio. And we did not only with just organ, but also with instruments too. So it led me down a path of much more choral directing and singing at the same time. We got hooked up later on with the National Medical Group, which is a group of physicians and nurses and hospital employees at veterans hospitals around the country who get together and put on concerts. The director saw a video of the UDC Chorale, which I was conducting. And he immediately called and contacted us and wanted us to be involved in that. That association has been since 1989.
Mm.
Both of us got chances to be soloists with the group and to be on national TV because the broadcasts were televised nationally. So I got another job, of course. I needed a job teaching at Howard University and the University of the District of Columbia part-time, where I dealt with musical theater students. I taught them voice. And that was a new experience because these students really had no background in the understanding of voice. They all had natural voices, and they all had developed styles of singing already. So not only did I have to teach them, but I had to unteach them a lot of things because they had a lot of bad habits.
Yeah.
And they were resistant to change because they thought they knew.
Right.
You know, that's a problem all the time. But I was really happy that a lot of my students there in the musical theater program went on to successful careers. You know Isaiah Johnson, because he was on TV on the OWN station on the program. David, what is it called?
David's a man, I think.
Right.
Right.
He was one of my students. He had an excellent voice, and he went to New York. And of course, he went into Broadway. He's done so many things on Broadway. There's roles that Black people can be involved in, of course. You know, not going to cast you in Carousel, but they will cast you in the Black musicals.
Right.
They put the white people in there.
So he didn't tell you that his voice was countertenor.
Oh,
Yeah. That's what I was gonna ask.
I'm a natural countertenor. And when I was growing up in high school, my voice was very high. I sang tenor, but it was really low for me.
Right.
So when I got to college, I thought it was going to change a lot more, but it was still very high. So by the time of my junior year, everybody started talking about, well, he should be doing more things, countertenor things. So that's when I started doing a lot of exploring. Handel, Bach, Purcell, because there are a lot of songs Purcell wrote for the countertenor type of voice. Songs that are very familiar, like Music for a While was written for that medium voice, higher than a regular tenor, but not soprano.
Right.
So I had to do a lot of transposing music for my recitals, but it was an opportunity to really get to know a lot more literature.
Right.
And so that helped me a lot.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Y'all have had such extensive careers in music.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that, you know, while we were in Italy, we coached with Antonio Moretti Bonanti, who was a vocal coach at La Scala. Mr. Jones did mention that, and at the Australian Opera House in Melbourne. And he was a wonderful vocal coach while we were there. And we both went to Italy on a fellowship. We didn't have to pay for the program at all. We were fortunate to be there with Talmadge Fauntleroy and Dr. Nicholas Rossi, and with William Weaver, who was on the Singers Roundtable at the Metropolitan Opera. Talmadge Fauntleroy was the producer, director of Porgy and Bess when the Mets' first Porgy and Bess came out in the 1980s.
Wow.
Talmadge Fauntleroy was that person who did that. But we had worked with him in Italy. And going back even further, I had worked with Talmadge Fauntleroy when I was at the School of the Arts because he had opera workshop. So I had worked with him in opera workshop as a high school student.
Right. And Talmadge and I were in graduate school at the same time, too.
Right.
So that's why I first worked with him too.
Mm-hmm.
We did production of, well, we did scenes. And we did the opening scene from the Coronation of Popea.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the aria that was sung by Ottone,
Mm-hmm.
the opening for that. That was my first time doing a scene from opera
Wow.
because we didn't have opera workshop at Howard at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to go outside of school to do a lot. A lot of people think that you'll get everything that you need in school because you're paying for tuition. But as musicians, you must go out into the community and find opportunities for you to perform and hone your skills because you're not going to get it all in school.
Yeah, that's definitely something I learned. I feel like I've learned so much more just now because
Right.
you do so much more research and have more knowledgeable people that are in your community, like you said.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. Talk to people in your field who know more than you do.
When
Yeah.
did you know that opera was your thing? I think Mr. Jones, you talked about doing that aria. Was that a moment where that hit you like opera is it?
That helped. When I was in undergrad school, one year, the theater department decided they were going to put on an opera by a Black composer.
Okay.
Robert Hooks had just come to the theater department, and he had a good friend who had written an opera, so they decided to produce it. And the theater department wasn't able to do it on their own, so they invited the music department students to help to be involved. And so the whole idea of learning the music and then going through the staging was so wonderful. I'd never done it before. That sort of got me hooked on it. And so whenever I had opportunity to be on stage singing, I tried to be involved in it.
Yeah.
And for me, it was, I must have been a junior or a senior, and there used to be a local opera company called the Washington Civic Opera Company that was through DC Government Department of Recreation. And the conductor was Richard Weileman. And he hired students from the Ellington School to be a part of the chorus. And that's what got me hooked on opera, because the first opera I was in was Les Nozze de Figaro, Marriage of Figaro. And not only did it give young people a chance to be involved in the whole workings of opera, the rehearsals, the staging, the putting it together, meeting the artists. But the one thing that was so great, it used so many local African American artists that were singing around here during that time. Like Regina McConnell sang The Countess, Sam Bond sang The Gardener, Antonio, I think. And it was just wonderful because these were people that we knew in the community,
Right.
that were out there singing and making it work for them as a career. So it was an inspiration to be a part of that type of environment. That's when I knew I wanted to be involved in classical music. Also, all of the opportunities that we got as young people to attend operatic performances and meet people like Shirley Verrett, Leontine Price. We met all these people in the 70s. Because the first time I met Leontine Price was at Wolf Trap, and I had given my first recital with a countertenor by the name of Charles Coleman. And as a gift from John Hall, who was then the supervisor of music in DC Public Schools, he took both of us out to Wolf Trap to meet Leontine Price.
That is so cool. Like, I can only imagine, like, having that community support seems so essential to developing talent as an artist. I feel
Oh, yeah.
especially the church.
Yeah, especially in the church where people are like where so many people are gathering on a regular basis.
Right.
And I feel like now my generation, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody in my generation, but what really helped me, it took me until like high school to be even introduced to opera in a way that was approachable for me because my teacher was an opera singer and he understood opera. And I feel like if I had a strong, even stronger community of opera singers and people who are passionate about classical arts, it would have put me even further with just knowledge and just information and just, even like starting a career earlier and so the things that could be done to be even better by this age. So it's very impressive to hear that there was such a community that was going on, you know, during that time, and how do you think that has changed over time?
Oh, it has changed greatly. It has changed a whole lot because I'm just thinking back, 35, 40 years ago, we had in this community in Washington, we had a community full of professionals who were pushing, especially Black artists and young Black artists, pushing you to the path of career path. And there were people like Madeline Dobbs, Charlotte Holloman, Sylvia Olden Lee, William Ray, all those people, Margaret Massey, Todd Duncan, Alma Blackman. I mean, the list just goes on and on. They were pushing Loretta Young from Baltimore. All those people were in the community performing all the time, and they were the people who knew how to connect you with other people and make opportunities for you.
Wow.
And in general, there was much more music making going on. On Sundays, we would look in the newspaper to see what concerts we were going to that day, and they were all free, whether they were, a lot of churches would do things, a lot of artists would give Sunday afternoon concerts. Almost everything was free.
Yeah.
So we had a choice of things to do, and we did it every Sunday for a long time. And then once the Kennedy Center was up and running, of course, we tried to take advantage of student tickets, which were half price, when we could afford it, of course. So we've had a lot of opportunities to listen to high quality classical music in DC. We had the East Garden concerts, the National Gallery. They had concerts from the YMCA, where they would do concerts of classical music on a weekly basis. The Friday Morning Music Club, and so other organizations, they would just give concerts. Churches gave concerts, choir concerts seasonally, of course, and they would do big works like the Messiah, Magnificat, Christmas Oratorio, enough works for Easter. And they always needed soloists, and they usually try to get the very best soloists with it. In the African American churches, of course, they presented the most outstanding African American singers. So you get a chance to hear them live, which is so invaluable. You can't learn about singing unless you hear people sing live.
Yeah.
It comes down to classical music.
And unless you have the get out there and experience it yourself by singing. And the thing during those times, the Martin Luther King Library, there were library concerts because we had, in our 38 years, I had the good fortune to sing on the concert series at the Martin Luther King Library. And they offered that for emerging artists. There was um, Sumner School, the Sumner School, Sumner Museum, which was a big, big pillar for young artists and concerts. They had a concert series. Mame Holt, Ben Holt's mother, was involved in that. That's where I first met Mrs. Holt many years ago, because she would work as the narrator for most of those concerts during that time. And there were just so many ways and avenues. There was the churches around here that would have great concerts. St. Luke's Episcopal was the church at the time, because St. Luke's brought in people from the Met, and some of the people who sang at St. Luke's made their career to the Met by singing at St. Luke's, like Robert McFerrin Sr., Myra Merritt, and several others. Carmen Balthrop, all of those people sang at St. Luke's Episcopal Church, and you could hear those people on any given Sunday. And St. Luke's was probably, I think, the first Black Episcopal church in this area to have an opera program. And they also integrated, because they would have white artists to sing too as well, because we heard lots of great artists during that period at St. Luke's.
I think both of us grew up through the Hinesley Opera Ensemble, which was centered in New York. Before I really started singing publicly, I would attend their concerts. And so that gradually led into me being involved, and Kelvin being involved as singers and as accompanist for myself. And that really helped a whole lot.
Yeah.
We not only gave concerts in the church, but they would have an annual concert at the Kennedy Center, which we were involved in.
We were involved in a lot. I was so fortunate that Mrs. Lee, Sylvia Lee, asked me to join Hinesley Opera when she was coaching me. And Mrs. Lee asked me to be a part of the board of directors of the Hinesley Opera Ensemble. It was a very viable group here in this area, and it did a lot for emerging artists. And I became the president of that organization for a number of years.
Wow, like it's just so amazing to just hear you talk about just like the strong community of just talented African American singers, and how they were putting the energy back into the community to develop a new generation of singers.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was pulling someone else up by the bootstraps and making a way for them. And that in this community, we still have some of the guards doing that for young people, but we don't have it like we used to have it in this community. Things have changed so drastically because of lack of funding and we just need to, and the lack of people with the willingness to give back to the community.
Okay.
That's what I see.
Plus, the musical styles in Black churches has changed a lot. So many churches who have turned just to
all gospel,
right,
and nothing else. It used to be that all the Black churches had gospel, they had spirituals, and they had classical music too. And they had different choirs to sing them. And each of the choirs would try to do a little bit of both, or whatever
all
the styles
styles.
was.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore. So that the community does not get to hear classical singing anymore.
Yeah.
And that's to a detriment to our community, I think, because we need to hear more good singing. We need to hear more good singing in every genre. And sometimes we hear something other than good singing, many genres.
Right.
Now, even in classical music, we have some people get up to try to sing, and they're really not up to the task.
Yes, I've definitely heard that. I've definitely heard that.
Right.
So you talked a little bit about like funding helped change it, the changes in styles in singing that was going on in the church helped change that kind of atmosphere that really kind of reared strong African American operatic talent. Do you think there were other issues or other things that contributed to the change and like the shift?
I think education.
Mm.
Yeah.
Education, because schools on the elementary and middle school or junior high school, high school levels, a lot with education thinks that, instead of giving the student what they need, we have changed to give them what they want.
Okay.
So that has been to our detriment for education and arts education. Arts education has been put in a way now where it's not offered on the elementary, middle school, and high school levels unless you go to a specialty school.
Right.
That shouldn't be. It should be offered in a regular academic school as well as schools of the arts. Everybody should be aspiring to the levels of excellence. And there's so much good in arts education.
Yeah.
And there's so much learning and reaching of so many levels of learning through sciences and through music, through all of these things, through art, through all of these different entities in the arts education, from visual arts, musical arts, instrumental. There's so much that helps the student in learning and have an appreciation for what it is that they're doing. But education has changed greatly, and it has killed the love of the arts education and performing arts.
Right. And even in Prince George's County, it's a little different because we have music and art in almost every school, every elementary school at least, and high schools too. But my principal said to me one time, well, just go teach them some gospel songs, that's enough. And I thought to myself, well, they already know that. How could I teach them something they already know?
Right.
I have a job to expand their knowledge base.
Mm-hmm.
What I did, I found out that they didn't know any spirituals. So the book that we used had a lot of examples of spirituals. So I made it my task to introduce them to as many spirituals as possible so that they would have a bigger understanding of what our musical history was and to introduce it to the other students because they didn't know anything about it, the ones who were not like this.
Right.
Right.
And that's important. That is so important. I had I had a colleague several years ago that said to me, and this is an African American, was saying that the spirituals are not important anymore, that they don't even use them on the college level. And I said to this person, I have never heard that in my life.
Mm-hmm.
The spirituals are just important as German lied, French chanson, Spanish melodies. They're just as important because all of it is music of the people. Say that about our heritage. I was even reading something just the other day in choir directors, where a choir director asked, should we keep the spirituals of William Dawson and what was the other composer? Well, and I was William Dawson and Nathaniel Dett. And
Okay.
I was just appalled.
Right.
But the people on the blog said, yes, of course you should keep it. And keep them the authenticity of the spiritual with the dialect.
Mm.
You have to do Black music justice in its idiom. And that's so important to singing it and performing it and whatnot. I had the good fortune of going to uh, England and Paris, France, with conductor Wyman Jones to perform the William Grant Still Negro Folk Suite. Now, usually that's all done with instrumental,
Mm-hmm.
but there are several spirituals that instead of just performing them with instrumental, they use my voice to perform Deep River and I Want to Be Ready or something another like that. It took off like lightning because people want to hear spiritual and
Right.
people want to hear, and that was maybe 20 years ago. People want to hear music of the people.
Exactly. Yeah. I just feel like listening to this conversation, I feel so lucky with the background that I've had with music. Been blessed with people who have experience, who know the music, and who have such a strong passion for Black history and a strong passion for our involvement in opera from the
Right.
beginning. So like I know like now you guys really work hard to continue to create that community of singing with like the artist group and continuing to that legacy of doing big choral works and giving singers, especially like me, opportunities to develop their artistry. And I think that is really that's really kind of what's keeping me going as a singer and keeping like the blog going, because knowing what I know, it's important that I share with other Black singers and continue to create that community. I think it's, like you said, it's so essential to what we're trying to do as Black opera singers.
Oh yeah. We started the artist group for that reason. We started the artist group uh, as a nonprofit organization to create avenues, platform for vocalists, instrumentalists, of African Americans, of classical background and training. Um, we did it with we opened up the artist group with two young ladies that were at the time sort of under our wing, and we were helping them. And it was mezzo soprano Marquita Cooper
Mm-hmm.
and soprano Angelique Ferret.
Mm-hmm.
And the concert just took off like lightning, and to a packed house, and we were so glad that we could do that for those young artists at the time. And they needed that. And they needed to be introduced to the community like that and have those kinds of opportunities. And both of them have moved on to do well. Um, Marquita Cooper, as you know, she used to be one of the soloists with us at Trinity.
Right.
And but she's doing very well with her singing and whatnot. And she's done several things. We used her one summer to sing Brahms' two songs for viola
Mm-hmm.
and um, and piano, and that was just so fabulous. So, and then we continued to feature other young artists. We started a summer series where we put the choirs together and in order to do works and have people in the community come out and experience uh, choral works and music uh, of all kinds of composers. We've done stuff from Gustav Holst to contemporary composer Colin Lett, and it's important that we continue to promote and put music out there,
Right.
because music is supposed to be used in the community as a form of education, healing, emotional feelings, uh, to bring the best out in the community, not the worst.
Right.
Right.
And we've been doing things at the art school. We started out with no budget, but what we did, we had the two artists, the patrons and sponsors, and we donated our abilities, and the church donated the space so that we were able to raise money and divide the money between the two singers, have a great concert, give them experience, and everything was better for it.
Right.
And it helped to propel the organization to greater heights.
Yes, indeed.
The main thing that we were interested in was making sure that singers had a platform to practice their craft.
Right.
Because through the practice of singing in front of a live audience, that's how you really learn the subtleties of singing. In the studio, you work with your teacher, but in the public is where you practice the
Your
true
art.
art of singing.
That's right. And you can't get it unless you have the opportunity to sing publicly and to perform publicly. That's how you really know your A's, B's, and C's about singing. Because the more you sing, the more you learn about the performing artist that you are creating within yourself. And the more you begin to love what you do, and the more you go with abandon and let your voice be the instrument that heals, that sings, and that ministers to the community at large. We had in the artist group, we've been so fortunate to have so many people that wanted to do things. We were really fortunate with Dr. Karen Walwyn. We did the Washington premiere of her work, The Life and Struggle of Nelson Mandela. And we had the opportunity to do the first performing for the Nelson Mandela Memorial at Howard University. And it really took off. And then after that, we had the opportunity to have a live recording of that at National Public Radio. Our good friend Joe Hagan, who was then in charge of community outreach and community concerts, brought the artist group to NPR to do a concert, because I think the previous summer we had performed some excerpts from Haydn's creation. And he was so moved. He came to me and he said, I want to talk to you to see how I can help this group. And so we were leaving the next day to go to California for a NAMM convention or something. I said, as soon as I get back, Mr. Hagan, I'll call you. And I did. And so it set up a precedence for the artist group. And we used the life and struggle of Nelson Mandela to present a new Black work to the community.
Right. Yeah, that's what I really love about the artist group, because it's just so many different opportunities, so much great community. And I think that having that strong community can make you a strong artist, especially as you're like trying to advocate for yourself in an industry that is very racist and can be very discouraging as you're trying to make, strides with doing something that you really love.
Yeah.
So what do you guys hope will change in the opera industry? I know during this time, a lot of companies are coming out and putting out statements how they support their Black artists and Black lives. And it's a good gesture. I think that there is a lot more that could be changed. I think there's a lot more that can be changed, specifically on the staff level, because there's a lot of companies who are trying to figure out how to engage with Black community and Black artists. And I think that wouldn't be a problem if they had more Black staff.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's the first thing. You have to employ Black people.
Right.
Black people that know the community. And you have to make more opportunities to use works of Black composers. And you have to do Black music.
And also, non-melanated people need to see Blacks doing good job at what they do.
Right.
Because many of them have the mindset that we don't know anything about opera, that that's a European thing.
Right.
Of course, we're European. We don't realize that our culture is a mixture of our African heritage and the European culture,
right,
which is the dominant culture here. I see it changing. You see more and more Black singers, but of course they're all outstanding. None of them are mediocre. They're all outstanding.
Right.
We're a lot more.
Right.
Because, we still have to be better than everybody else in order to be recognized.
Right.
Talmadge Fauntleroy was one of the few Black scenic directors that I knew working at a major house.
Mm-hmm.
Tragically, he passed away before he could really develop to his zenith.
Right.
But you don't see a lot of people behind the stage because you don't see a lot on the stage.
No.
But the ones you see, of course, are wonderful, beyond compare.
Right.
Even in the opera chorus, you have the same problem. I sang with the opera chorus, Washington Opera, for maybe 2 or 3 seasons. And I noticed that in DC, I knew so many Black singers, but the chorus was majority white all the time. And half of them didn't sing as well as some of the people in my church choir.
Exactly. We both had the opportunity to sing with Washington Opera. And when I started singing with Washington Opera in the late 1980s, I was 24, I think. I was 24 years old. And a lot of people, there were a lot of singers that were wonderful, that Black singers that should have been singing solo parts then. But there was that racial divide there because I left Washington Opera and then went back in the 90s and sang with them for a season or two. And seemed like the racial divide had taken over even more. So I was so glad that wonderful philanthropist, her name was DeRosette Blunt. She's no longer. She said to me, "I'm in charge of the Women's Auxiliary at Washington Performing Arts, and we would love to have you to join in our Enriching Experiences program." And so that's where I went. After that, that's exactly where I went, and I've been with them ever since.
So you said it was worse the second time?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Wow. And this is in the 90s. I mean,
that was in the early 90s. A lot of people continued to be there because that's their choice.
Right.
But racism is racism.
Right.
Right.
Racism is racism because I remember during that season, during a performance of, we were in the Tales of Hoffman, me and 2 other Black colleagues, and this woman, we were sitting there waiting to go back on stage for the Olympia scene, and one of the choristers said, "Oh, is this the back of the bus?"
Okay.
So.
And this is the 90s.
Yeah.
Very small-minded people.
Yeah, you still have small-minded people.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know a lot of opera singers now, a lot of, people my age are just telling their experiences. There's even accounts dedicated to exposing some of the experiences that Black people face, um,
right.
especially as classical artists. And it's very heartbreaking because so many people have been discouraged.
And
Um,
I say this, we as Black performing artists, we need to get together and make our own institutions. It doesn't have to be on the level of the Met, but we need to do that so that we develop uh, an audience that will listen and hear and come and enjoy what we do.
right.
Because we can't wait for them to give us jobs.
No.
We have to establish that ourselves.
Yeah.
And I applaud being Opera Ebony in New York and what's the other group?
Um,
There's Opera Creole in New Orleans.
Opera
Opera
Creole,
Creole, yes.
right.
We had a chance to meet those people and be with them, even have lunch with them a couple of years ago when we were in New Orleans. They're a wonderful group of people.
Opera Ebony.
Opera Ebony is wonderful in New York, um, and we
Opera
know
Noir.
Opera Noir,
Yeah.
Opera Noir, and great artists like Greg Hopkins and those people like that in New York that put all that together. Years ago, Dr. Gregory Hopkins he was the Black Pavarotti, and he was singing everywhere. So, and he was singing here with the Heinz Lee Opera as well, because we both were singing with the Heinz Lee Opera at the same time. So we have to create more opportunities to be creative for Black artists, to create opera platforms
Right.
for Black artists and put on Black operas and put on Black musicals.
Right.
Right.
And we have to create avenues to get the young people involved. We can't be a closed door community to our own people.
Yeah.
We have to continue to strive and work together.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I think that is very important because there's so many people who were like me, very interested in opera from a very young age, did not know what I was talking about, but I just knew I liked it. And
Right.
I was lucky. I was very lucky to have people who knew opera and who knew what they were talking about to guide me in that direction. I think that these young people, there are a lot of young singers who, like high school age, young people who want to know opera, and they want to know opera from people who look like them. And one of my friends was telling me, she said on Instagram that she didn't have a Black opera teacher until she got into graduate school. And I mean, that's got to be very, very, very hard to deal with for such a long time, and to continue to persevere. Is really, it depends on like your character and your strength to continue to to deal with things you might not have to deal with if you had a Black teacher from the beginning.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one with experience and understand the workings of what's going on out here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
I think for a teacher, especially if you're interested in opera, you have to study with somebody who was an opera singer,
Right.
who had a career in opera,
Right.
as opposed to like many teachers in DC that never really sung anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's a famous teacher. I looked up her on the internet, and I couldn't find anything about her ever singing. All I could find out was reviews of some of her students. And I said, how can you be a teacher and nobody knows anything about you singing anywhere?
Mm. Yes.
That's a lot.
And a lot of people get involved studying with people who have a reputation, who've never done anything, who've never turned out any outstanding students, or like I said, have never sung themselves. That's usually a waste of time.
Yeah. They really, because what can they really tell you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
they don't have the experience.
Right.
exactly.
But I love this conversation about community. It's been very enlightening. And it's been hopefully it'll be encouraging for these new singers who are coming up and coming out, that they'll have the time, especially during the pandemic. It's just so much more time to invest back into the community,
Right.
and then just create a new generation of opera lovers, because I feel like if these opera industry people don't get it right, it could be very detrimental to the future of opera. But I know
Oh
that
yeah,
if we
definitely.
yeah. If we continue to create a community, like you were saying, of Black opera people who, invest in our own institutions, then we can really create something that's very special and beautiful for the future.
Oh yes, and it has to be multi-generational,
Mm-hmm.
because you know when we were coming up, there were lots of people that were much older, but they had so much to offer
Right.
because they have been out there. So that's, we have to respect our elders, and we have to respect the people who have put out there or been out there just a few minutes longer than those that are trying to get out there.
Right.
You know, we really have to have a good working relationship built like that, and teach our young people that's what's needed.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to people that have been out there, and
Right.
listen to people that have even had the opportunities to be singing and in the community and outside of the community, because everybody brings something to the table.
Right.
You know,
So I would love to hear a little bit about what's next for you guys. I know we're still in a pandemic right now, but do y'all have like future goals or dreams?
oh yeah, there's always future goals, and the thing, once we come out of the pandemic, I really am planning on. I would love to have a concert featuring young artists,
Mm-hmm.
and but we have to think how we can get this done.
I know.
But featuring young artists and an ebony showcase,
Mm-hmm.
a beautiful showcase of young artists and emerging artists and seasoned artists. Before this came about, I was thinking about having the five tenors in concert. So it was
Mm-hmm.
tenors from all different voice types coming together to sing. But maybe that will get on the road
Yeah,
once this is over, you know?
that sounds good. Mr. Jones?
Well, my thinking is along some of the same levels.
Mm-hmm.
My church choir is really small, but the church since I've been there, we've had a really good presentation type of activities at the church, musical presentations.
Right.
We have done a program. We started in 1996. It was the first program. I got all my friends together and asked them if they could help us with a fundraiser for the music department.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, they all volunteered their services for free. And so we decided that we would continue that.
Mm-hmm.
And we had continued that up until the pandemic, of course.
Right.
Have a program every year
Mm-hmm.
as a fundraiser to keep music alive,
Right.
and to present to the community free concerts,
Right.
because that's important.
Yeah.
Most places they'll charge you $25 at the minimum to go to a concert if it's something that's not professional. And of course, the prices for professional concerts are way, way up in the sky.
Right.
You get the community involved, and you give them something that everybody can afford,
Right.
because everybody can't afford $25.
Well, it's much, much more
Right.
nowadays. And the other thing I would like to see happening too, years ago, the local Black companies like Hinesley and DC Black Rep, they were always reviewed. They were always reviewed in the paper. Now you know, we don't have that kind of luxury where people get to know about these companies through an accredited columnist or person who does reviews and whatnot. So we need to have much more of that within our community. We really do. We need to have much more of that, so that the community at large will learn about the local companies and local happenings, not just everything at the Kennedy Center or just every big artist that comes in, you know? Because we used to have, I was going through today, Joseph McClellan used to do reviews of the Hinesley Opera, and Frank Conlon, who's an accompanist here, when we did concerts at Annunciation Church. Now, this man used to have concerts of all the big black artists in the area, and he would have it was like a marathon on a Sunday afternoon of spirituals and operatic pieces, and dedicated to famous black people. And he used to do that quite often, and we all got reviews and whatnot for that. It was really a wonderful way to introduce the community to what's happening within the community.
That's amazing. Okay, this is my last question. If you could write an opera, what would it be about? Or if you did write an opera, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, I thought about that, and we've had so many things to happen right now that is fertile material for an opera. Okay. We could write something about George Floyd. You know, I thought about an opera about Barack Obama and his presidency. You know, they have one about Richard Nixon.
Nixon in China.
Right.
Yeah.
But he went through a lot his 8 years. Plenty of material to make a very interesting opera. And so many other people who have achieved great things in these past few years. That's where I would start.
Right.
Sounds good.
That's wonderful, because I was thinking on the same wavelength of Barack Obama and his presidency. So many wonderful Washingtonians that have been around.
That's true.
So we would need to do an opera maybe based on Carter G. Woodson, Charles Wesley, like that. People
and unsung black singers,
unsung black heroes too, like the blood plasma man,
Dr.
Charles Drew.
I would suggest Madam Lillian Ivanti.
Madam Lillian Ivanti.
Yes. Suppose she lived right here in D.C.
Right.
And she was later too.
Yeah.
Henrietta Jones. An historic figure, and most people don't know about her.
Right.
She had a great career.
She did.
And she produced herself in most things.
Right.
She had to make a living, you know.
Right.
We have to do that too.
So we need to we need to write an opera or a musical based on our heritage.
Oh yeah. I think definitely about us.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. Yeah, there's so much we could talk about. We have to have y'all back so we could talk about it, because I definitely want to talk a little bit more about Black opera history, and just how we got lost in the history of opera. So I can't wait to have y'all back.
One more thing. I'm telling you, I have the good fortune of singing Remus in South Dakota, and all the audiences were white. But to do that Scott Joplin work and tour all over South Dakota it was just amazing. The opera Treemonisha says so much about the community, but the tenor aria, wrong is never right, and it will never be. Those words are so powerful, and it holds true to today.
Yeah.
Wrong is never right, and it will never be.
Yeah.
And what is happening today, all the wrongs have come out, and people are protesting it. So if we could include those types of things into a new opera, there you have it.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, thank y'all so much. I really appreciate you coming and talking with us.
Okay, we enjoyed it so much.
Yes, my pleasure, and his pleasure too, I'm sure.
Yeah, our pleasure.
And never doubt what he said.